Welcome to Transform Now, a podcast focused on intelligent automation and brought to you by SS&C Blue Prism. On this program, we talk about how organizations globally are rethinking the way they operate, utilizing process orchestration and AI-enabled digital workers to free up humans to do the work that matters most. We also share insights and tips on how you can embrace this new way of working and unleash your full potential. Let's get into the show.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Transform Now. I'm Brad Hairston. My guest today is Mark Settle, who has appeared on the podcast twice before. Mark is a 7-time CIO. He's a 2-time book author. He serves on the advisory boards of several firms, and he personally advises startup companies. Today, Mark and I will be discussing how AI and automation are impacting workforce productivity. Welcome back, Mark. Good to see you again. Why don't you give everyone a little bit more of an intro?
Good to see you, Brad. Thanks for inviting me back. We live in interesting times. So currently, as you pointed out, I have advisory relationships, formal relationships with several firms. I also work with some venture capital firms, and probably at least 2 or 3 times a week, I typically am asked to interact with some kind of a startup set of founders or whatever to just do a kind of a smell check, if you will, whether this kind of passes muster, how realistic it is. And so it's a lot of fun at this stage. I don't have to go into the office every day and administer performance reviews or defend my budget or put up political brush fires. I just get to think about technology.
So you never get the urge to jump back into the frying pan and take another CIO role again? That hasn't come up yet?
Well, I can be seduced up to a point, and then I look in the mirror and I think about the practical reality of what's about to happen, so that I can reel myself back in pretty quick.
Yeah. Well, one thing you are very plugged into, Mark, is the mindset of today's CIO, and it's such a crazy environment we live in. The last podcast I did with you was 2 years ago, and that was right about the time that OpenAI released ChatGPT, and just look at how things have changed in the 2 years since then. I mean, everything seems to be moving at a different pace. Priorities have changed. I'd love to hear your thoughts on where do you see CIOs' heads right now? What is consuming most of their attention? Is it a lot of the same things that they normally focus on, or is it a different landscape given what's happened with technology disruption, specifically Gen AI?
Unfortunately, for the people that are still doing the job on a day-to-day basis, the answer is both, right? Because those traditional operational responsibilities, I mean, I've been in calls this last week, spirited debates about how a service desk should operate. That's one of the most fundamental functions of any IT group. And of course, it's being influenced by the new technology that's you described. And then I think that is complemented by some pretty active experimentation. Accenture, they said, we have $1 billion book of business helping companies develop their AI strategy. They must be talking to different companies, though, because the ones I talk to, they're taking very focused baby steps. They're looking at low-hanging fruit. They're trying things.
Right.
In fact, I'll tell you a story. There's a friend in Silicon Valley, their executive team got together and formed like a subcommittee of the executive team. So let's start to play with this AI technology. Let's see what we can do with these large language models, et cetera. And so they came up with, I think it was like about a half a dozen different prototype POC things that they wanted to try. And they had been at this for a little over 12 months. So I asked my friend, I said, well, you think after the 12 months, are they more gung-ho than when they started? And are they sort of saying, hey, let's double down this and let's go? Or have we become a little more cautious? She said, we're definitely more cautious. And the other thing, this is not profound. I think a lot of people are struggling to really measure tangible benefits. And I know that's eases us into the conversation today about productivity. Sure, it helps in some ways, but how do I measure that? And just because I give people back some time by taking some mundane work and doing it better or easier or faster, how does that manifest itself actually in productivity terms?
So let's dig into that, because I'd love to hear your thoughts about why is it difficult for companies to measure the impact on productivity. That seems to be a challenge for most companies that you talk to and I talk to. And how can they make progress there to really establish accurate, reliable metrics, especially as it relates to knowledge work, which we know is the category that's been impacted so much by AI and automation and so forth. What are your thoughts on that?
So kind of ironically, I think a lot of companies don't really have good internal productivity metrics. They don't really know what to measure exactly. You could take a back office group that's processing invoices, and let's say you had two different groups, and one group is taking in cash from customers that have accounts that they're spending $10,000 a month with you. There's another group that's processing invoices from customers that are spending $500 a month with you. Just look at the number of transactions that they were closing. You might come to the conclusion, oh, group B is like super more productive. Like number that we're forcing through, same number of people. Over here, why does it take these people so much time to, how's this the fewer people? But then if you look at the dollar kind of perspective, you'd say, oh my God, that A group is just kicking it. Look how they're booking with only the 10 people. So that's just a very coarse kind of example where people struggle to measure productivity. The nature of work changes as well. So there's another good example. I will just kind of continue with our thoughts. Perhaps you had a company with those kind of processing groups for the first 5 years of the company's existence. All of their customers were within the United States. They maybe acquired a company in Europe. They fired all the people over there that processed invoices, and they brought that work into the group that was here. And said, like, go at it. Like, we think you should be able to observe this work. And again, the nature of the work has changed in such a way that whatever the old baseline was or how you were making the measurement before, you kind of got to redefine that. So it sounds unbelievable, but yes, in many, many cases, there really are not good productivity metrics. So the problem with metrics is people try to achieve certain kinds of metrics when they're viewed by management on a regular basis, and they should probably be either sunsetted or they should be surgically altered on a pretty regular basis, because otherwise you engender behaviors that are totally unintended or counterproductive. I think a lot of companies, and this isn't something a CIO or an IT who can come in and help you understand what your business metrics are.
Mark, for many years in the automation and AI realm, a lot of organizations have focused heavily on the time savings that they're getting from implementing these technologies, and they report back, these are the hours saved or the hours returned to the business using kind of soft metrics like that. In your opinion, do those time savings typically translate into productivity gains?
Tell you a story, which I think is a better way of answering that than maybe just me philosophizing. So in one of the companies I worked in, there was a woman, a senior vice president. And as everybody knows, anybody listening to this that works in IT knows all of the machinations you go through to build a business case, right? And we always talk about what are the hard benefits and what are the soft benefits,
right?
Whether you want to call it time savings or productivity or whatever, those are the soft benefits. So I brought her this business case, and she said, you know what? I think I've paid for the same productivity benefits 3 times before this one. And I don't want you to ever bring me another business case with time savings, because I just never see it happen. It just never materialized. And I hate to say this, but at the end of the day, a lot of senior corporate executives, they think they've made the investments. They think they've done the process reengineering. They've done kind of all the right things. In the real world, when those savings and benefits don't materialize, they lay people off or they defer hiring. They come in with kind of the coarse knife approach to doing it because they're so frustrated that they feel they've done all the right things. There's nothing more that they can do, right? And I guess the other thing, you started me down this road. The other fallacy in the time savings world is if you give a large population of employees little bits of time back, it's rarely harvested in a business critical way. let's be fair. Let's say I get a couple minutes back every hour. Well, am I going to spend more time in the coffee bar, or am I going to go for a longer lunch, or am I going to lean over beside of my cube and chat with you about the 49ers are going to like win the Super Bowl this year or whatever? Right. So how you harvest that time in the world we've constructed, supervisors are not supposed to be managing the minute-to-minute activities of non-exempt employees. It's really hard to be an effective first-level manager of non-exempt employees doing knowledge work. One of the areas where AI has had the biggest impact is software engineering and the ability to generate write code or whatever. The symptom among us would say all the big layoffs at the big tech companies that have happened over the last 12 months is just a proactive benefit harvesting going on by the executives there saying, well, we could wait for this to manifest itself, or it's inevitable, it's going to happen. If you or I were managing a small software engineering team and this technology is introduced and it's obvious that there's 20 or 30% of the time that they've spent in the past is unnecessary, what are we doing about that?
Yeah.
Right. And yes, you come in on Monday and you've got that 20% back. They have to learn how to use the tool, etc.
Right.
So a little bit at a time, they kind of harvest those time savings for their own purpose. And then how they redeploy that is left to the reader. You have to determine.
Yeah. It's an interesting new problem, right? That has appeared, especially with Gen AI, because what do employees do with the extra time they have as they learn how to use it more and more? And it's taking away a lot of manual things. I read an article a while back from a professor at Wharton that was really interesting. He talked about how companies need to really take a hard look at the meaning of work in the various departments. So even the meaning of work, what work means to your individual employees is changing, because they're looking at what they used to do and they're realizing that they have a lot of new time available to do different things. And that's really making them reevaluate what they do and what are they interested in, and do they want to continue down this same path? It's creating a lot of interesting new things for executives to figure out when you all of a sudden have freed up time, which we know AI especially is doing now.
I think there's another kind of lens to look at this whole phenomena through, which is most people, even though there's a philosophy which I have tried to instill in myself unsuccessfully, which is like when you come in the morning, you should do the hardest thing that you have to do first thing of the day. Like just, but human nature being what it is, me as a personal example, probably like 80% of the world, what I think happens in 80% of the world, you come in and say, where's some little easy stuff that I can do? The perfect example is, I know I shouldn't be doing the email. Clean up my email inbox first thing in the morning. It's waste of time. I have tried to school myself to do that like in the mid to late afternoon, because I kind of wilt during the day. But for the life of me, it's a habit that I can't shake. Like when I get a sense of accomplishment, whatever it is. I think a more enlightened way for an employer to look at these tools is to say, what I want to do is I made this investment in human capital. And I am dithering away a good part of that investment by allowing people to devote a significant fraction of time to doing what's effectively busy work. Who knows? I may have even incented the busy work. I'm keying off of the comments you made about how people view work and how they apply themselves in their job. Yeah. There's definitely people that love the challenge of the hardest thing to do, or I have to master a new skill or capability to solve this problem. And yeah, you kind of get around to that sooner or later in your job. But whether people come in every day and say, what's the most important, critical thing that I really need to get done today? Is when you got a gun pointed at your head.
Yeah. Mark, what role do you think workplace culture plays in determining whether automation and AI initiatives are going to actually result in productivity improvements?
That's a good question. I guess it depends. If you're in a culture that prides itself on trying different things, being early adopters and all that, this just becomes part of the way you think about going to work every day. Like if you and I worked at Google or Databricks or whatever, like I think we'd just say, yeah, this is great. Like, let's go give this a try. If we were in perhaps bolder, larger, more structured businesses, There are little pockets of teams that are highly innovative that would embrace this, be the first to give it a try. And then there'd be others that would say, well, no, we've done this for a long time, or the last time we did it, it kind of blew up in our face. So I want to go and take a risk again. The glib part of this is management support. And by that, I really mean business management support. And whether this is kind of the fad of the quarter, or whether we're really going to go in this direction. And so I think in my experience in IT leadership roles, especially coming into it, because I had changed jobs frequently, you kind of come into a new role, new CIO job, and like 20% of the people there have been waiting for you as the Messiah. They are so frustrated. They think you will take them to the promised land. There's another 20% that either were at the likes of your predecessor, or they're just cynical about the whole company, whether the IT function or whatever. So they're completely resistors. That leaves like the 60 undecided% in the middle that are like the undecided ones that you kind of have to convince over time that, yeah, we really are going to change, right? Like we really are going to go to the cloud and shut the data center down. Yeah, we really are going to turn off the ERP system and go buy 60 SaaS applications. You can proclaim them and you show up, but then they want to see, okay, I want to see, like, did the budget grow while he was here? Did we get to hire the new people that we thought we needed to get? Are we impressed by the new people that have come in, et cetera? So you have to kind of win the hearts and minds of that 60%, like in the middle over time. And I think that's the cultural challenge that you face if you view yourself as a change agent, a leader.
Sure. We've seen some tech layoffs in the news. That's not something new, but seems like it's happening more and more. Do you think business leaders are overly optimistic about how AI will drive productivity?
Yeah, I guess the short answer is yes. I think, kind of repeating what I said before, they're going to harvest these savings in advance for two reasons. One, it's because it's a belief in the technology. And two, because they don't want to see all of those time savings frittered away by people doing other stuff. So if you blink twice, suddenly everybody will tell you how hard they're working and how important the work is that they're doing, et cetera. I mean, we can't do it with fewer people. It'd be impossible now. Here's another great example. But when a company buys another company, and tells Wall Street, hey, we're going to have some rationalization savings here. Like we look at our operating expense budget and their operating expense budget. They don't need all those HR people. They don't need all those IT people. They don't need all that, whatever. You want to get rid of those other people as fast as you can. Because if you say, I've been to this movie, they have financial targets for this fiscal year. We can't touch them. So we're going to let them stay just as they are. Don't even go talk to them. Don't meet them, because that's like the most important thing. We need the revenue and the profitability that they're going to deliver. And that's the whole thing. And then we'll come back in a year. We'll take away their data center, and we'll take away their ERP system, and we'll put them on our service desk to do all this stuff. In the first 90 days, when there's job security issues, people will agree to anything. If you come back and try to move their cheese, they're like, well, you can't do that. We couldn't do it without Brad.
Oh, of course not. Brad is essential. Mark, the regulatory aspect of AI continues to evolve pretty rapidly. And I know you're on the West Coast. California alone has signed something like 19 different AI regulations into law, although Governor Newsom vetoed the last one, apparently. Do you think that all this is going to slow down adoption of technology like this? Is this going to maybe temper the pace a little bit, or do you think this is just a natural growing pain that we're going through because we're in a space that has got so many inherent risks in it?
No, I don't think it's going to slow down the pace. I think you take some lessons from the privacy laws in the U.S., right? We now have 20 states with independent privacy laws. There was some movement in the last Congress to try to develop a national policy. If you remember when I said last Congress, I mean, it was one or two before that. Pelosi at the time was the leader of the House, and California had one of the most progressive, stringent approaches to privacy. And the federal law was not going to be as stringent. And so she was now receptive to this idea of coming up with something that was kind of a compromise in between, which I just don't passing judgment on that. So we've seen this play out. So we've gone down that path. It looks like this is act 2 of the same play where, you and I can talk in 2 more years, and there'll be 20 states that have their own AI legislation about what has to be looked at. People don't always realize is, the law got passed. Yeah, okay, the law got passed. Usually takes somewhere between 3 and 5 years of judicial adjudication to develop a book of practice of what that really means. I need to do on my job. When the law first comes out, there's usually a period, we passed the law, you get 12 months to get ready for it. It'll go into effect 12 or 18 months from now. Then it goes into effect. And then we start arguing about, no, the law didn't mean that. It doesn't mean I can't do this. So I'm good. And then the courts have to come in. So the whole deliberate process that we go through, is the foundation of our country. I mean, it's not necessarily a bad thing. All those checks and balances were constructed by the founding fathers for really good reasons. So that process moves at such a glacial speed that it's hard to believe that, especially in our country. Well, you talk about culture. I think that you could look at the differences between the European countries and GDPR, how they were able to come together and do that. And then they've spent 5 years more trying to figure out what it really means and how it should be.
Right.
Is it going to really go in the way? No, the technology I think will move way too fast for the regulations to catch up.
Yeah. Well, with the incredible pace of technology innovation, we shouldn't be surprised that there's yet another entrant to the market that's challenging all of us to think differently. And that's this whole concept of agentic AI. I want to get your thoughts on that and how that impacts productivity and the way we measure productivity. Because if we truly have these autonomous agents that are not just automating work for us, but they're able to make decisions, they're able to change direction, they're able to think and act much more human-like than any AI version we have today, that would seem to create a whole nother set of challenges for leaders to think through in terms of how that impacts their workforce.
This idea of having agents that have skills. And so there might be an agent that's specialized in HR and an agent that's specialized in financial planning and analysis. And there's anyone that's specialized in IT service desk operations. And there will be some kind of a capability for the agents to interact with each other. I'm the FP&A agent and I want to extend credit to this organization. And I guess the rules for whether my pay grade, I can extend this credit, I need to go check with HR to tell me that it's okay for me to do it, all that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be at all surprised if we evolved into a point sort of like the way we have marketplaces today. The vendors have marketplaces, agentic marketplaces. And so you might say, well, they've got a really well-trained HR agent, so I want to use them. But then I want to go over here. There's a fintech company. They've built this kind of an agent for these fancy blockchain operations. And so you kind of assemble your own little agentic team. And then all we need is standards about how they can communicate with each other, governments and that kind of stuff. Nothing happened next year, but I think you could reach that point. And that kind of gets closer to the unsafe that you're talking about, where a lot of work gets performed with very little, if any, kind of human interventions.
Yeah.
I think in principle, that's a very predictable outcome. And one of the reasons, I think it sounds like a fantasy right now to a lot of, it sounds like a fantasy.
Yeah.
Here's the thing I've learned through decades of IT experience. Whenever any new automation tool comes in, and I don't care if it's a script, a playbook, a recipe, a no code workflow, whatever it is, you bring in a tool like that and you start to use it. 12 months later, you look at what you're using it for. You would have never imagined when they brought that tool in that in a million years you would ever allow the tool to do that. I'm going to go back and really take the time travel machine back. So a lot of people never heard of Patch Tuesday, but Patch Tuesday was the day of the week when there were patches to all the server OS systems. So then we invented the ability to continuously patch at will whenever. So nobody says, oh, I wish we had Patch Tuesday back. So that's my point. Whenever few people say, yeah, I want to hang on and do work, no could be automated away.
You're right. Everything new that crops up like this, initially we shake our heads and say, no way, no way. And then, a month later, we're like, oh my goodness, it's permeating everything, right? Well, I have one last question for you, Mark. I'd like to just get your thoughts on the tension between driving workforce productivity and fostering innovation. The latter always requires time for experimentation and creative problem solving. And so can these two goals coexist?
Absolutely. And I go back to that example before. This technology that is emerging, the vast majority of CIOs that I talk to are not on some holy crusade to convert the entire employee population of their companies to use this technology universally for every end of the business. They're forming alliances that they're using existing alliances with their business partners to sit down and just take baby steps at a time. If you remember this statistic from several years ago, but when we first set up machine learning teams, there was something like only 20% of the machine learning algorithms that they developed were put into production. So I think a lot of the dipping the toe in the water activity that's going on right now will not necessarily see the light of day in production. Although people would say, "Oh, we're doing it. Like we're definitely count me in." But how much of that actually gets converted into production at the end of the day, time will tell. I don't think there's a tension. I mean, people really don't hang on to busy work for the most part. Like if they actually find a way, they may not know what they're going to do with the time savings. They may, frankly, not like the ideas that management has about what management would like them to do with the time savings.
No doubt about it. Well, Mark, it's been great having you back on the podcast for the third time. Really appreciate you joining me to talk about workforce productivity and the impact of technology on it. Love hearing from someone who's right in the middle of helping a number of organizations, including startups, figure out how to measure this and get their finger on the pulse of what it means to enhance productivity at all levels through technology. So thank you again for joining us. Really appreciate it. And I wish you the best.
Okay, Brad. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Transform Now, the podcast from SS&C Blue Prism. You can find all of our episodes on your favorite podcast channel, as well as YouTube. To stay on top of the hottest topics in the world of intelligent automation, subscribe now. The future of work is here.